All right, you guys, welcome to yet another episode of the Online Prosperity Show, the number one place where we unpick real stories behind the leaders who are solving problems that most people feel, but they don't want to tackle or don't even know how to fix. I'm your host, Prosper Tarovinga, and maybe if you've ever felt stuck between wanting to build something meaningful and not knowing exactly how to turn that into real world impact, I think this episode is for you. Today, we're going to be diving deep into leadership, innovation, and building uncommon solutions with somebody who just doesn't talk about change, but he actually engineers it. So make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you're watching or listening to this on, because this is where transformation meets truth. Now, today, I'm really excited to welcome and bring to the forefront Peter Kazikas, the CEO of uncommon.org and Pachena. Now, Peter, how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. This is it's exciting to be here. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Or should I have said Magadini or Dave? Which one do you
You
subscribe to?
know, yeah, Jidiste and Fana. Yeah, my Shona, some of it I picked up in the streets in DZ, some of it I've tried to learn speaking with some CEOs and executives. So I've got a mixed collection of words and phrases. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Maita Vasa.
Absolutely, but you would know your way around Harari or eating a freezer, right? So at least that's one of those things that we can work with for now.
Absolutely, man. I could take you to one of the most classic sadza joints in M.E.D.I.A. I can take you a lot of places in town. So, and I'll looking forward to sharing some of those stories with you.
Oh, good. How do you like your salsa? With what do you normally have it with?
Oh man, stew, beans, collard greens. Like some of the, I love the white sadza. I like the peanut butter sadza too. It's the first thing I get when I land in Zimbabwe. So I kind of take it anyway, eat it with
Uh,
my hands. Just ask our team. I will have it in Bari, in DZ, and anywhere they're serving it. You can find me there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. You just brought in a bit of nostalgia on my part. But before we start, I've got to ask you. You're a triplet, right? It actually means maybe from day one, competition was built in the way you were brought up.
Uh, I am the middle triplet. We're each separated by about 45 seconds. I'm about 6'3". My brother is about 6'6", but he's the baby, and he used to beat me up every day as a kid. And he would always have me pinned down and say, "I can't believe you're getting beat up by your baby brother." And we definitely competed all the way through, but we always had a lot of fun together. And I think being a triplet is the coolest thing. You've got friends always right around you. It was easy to have little parties back in the day when without your parents realizing it. Your sister invites her friends, your brother invites his friends, and next thing you know, you've got a party going on. So we had a lot of fun, and certainly competition was part of it, but we had a great childhood.
Absolutely. So obviously, being the middle triplet, you would have learned leadership early, right? Or was it survival?
Oh, probably survival. I mean, I don't want to I don't want to paint the wrong picture, but yeah, I think we learned diplomacy, maybe how to stop fights before they started, how to negotiate. We shared everything. We shared a womb, we shared a birthday. That we never really, we had to be very, I'd say, diplomatic and generous and patient. Maybe those are the skills that we learned, and also some toughness too.
You see, that alone automatically tells me a little bit about yourself and how you would have grown up, because like you're saying, there's a lot of sharing, there's a lot of commonality in all of that, and there's also a lot of comparison. Like you already mentioned the height between you and your brother, which automatically tells me that you guys are always comparing yourselves amongst each other, because you obviously would have been considered one and the same sort of person. So Would you think that early experience has shaped how you maybe build organizations and help people stand out and thrive?
That's interesting. You know, I haven't really thought that much about the way my being a triplet shaped the work that I do now, but I do think maybe that generosity or sort of caring about others was probably instilled for me, and just by default, having to always look out for my siblings and knowing that they're looking out for me. And the work that we've done at Uncommon is really all about just caring for our friends and our brothers and sisters around the world and trying to give everybody an equal shot. So I don't know, maybe that was somehow instilled in me there, but I'd have to think a little bit longer about the lessons that I learned being a triplet and how that applies to where I am today. I'm sure there's many. You probably are getting them better than I have, but I'd have to think about it a little bit more.
Oh, I mean, obviously, it's something that you never see because fish don't see the water that they swim in, but it's the people that are outside. Because to you,
Right.
they're not triplets, they're just your brothers. All right. And so there's one thing about growing up, there's identity. Are you guys like, similar looking, or is it you can tell each
So
other?
it's yeah, it's two boys and one girl, and we have an older sister also. And I think we learned a lot from that because she's the one she was the only child, and then all of a sudden she got three siblings all at once, and that kind of in some ways could have ruined her parade, you know, going from only child to now being a bit overshadowed by the triplets, which is still an, sort of an unusual thing. And she was the best older sister, the most caring and sweet, and she never made us feel bad for having sort of stolen the show so early on. She just really was thoughtful, and in fact it was in her footsteps that I actually was trying to follow when I found myself in Zimbabwe. It was really she had led the way, and it was I was trying to emulate a bit of her lived experience when I went to Zimbabwe for the first time. So yeah, I'd learned a lot from all of our siblings, and they're I've been blessed to be so close with all of my siblings. It really has been wonderful. And so with the triplets, it's two boys, one girl. I think you'd recognize us as siblings, but we're certainly not, we don't look identical or anything like that. And we've all have our distinct interests and quirks, and we're living all over the country. So we stay close, but we're not, we're not like some twins or triplets you might think of where we're calling each other every day and know what each other's thinking.
Absolutely. So you did hint a little bit about obviously the way you guys grew up. It was instant party, and your sister had to accommodate three other siblings that just rocked up seemingly from nowhere, instant family, so to speak. But was
Yeah.
there any expectation now that there was now all of you guys to at least do well, excel in like live school or just in general?
Yeah. You know, I don't know. My parents, I used to think that they were kind of hippies, and maybe they were. I need to fact check a little bit, but they were very laissez-faire, and perhaps that's just because they wanted two kids, they got four. This is just kind of a crazy experience. It's all a blur. But they were very much. They didn't put a lot of pressure on us. They put pressure on us to treat people with respect and to represent our family and maybe our state or our country if we were out of the country to represent ourselves well. They taught us a lot about doing the right thing and treating everybody equally. They didn't put that much pressure on who we would become what or what success looks like. We were very lucky to have a super close immediate family and extended family, and I think the picture of success to us was a close family and just siblings liking each other and cousins getting along and grandparents and aunts and uncles all staying close. So I think that was mostly what success was like. So they didn't I didn't have to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer. My dad and grandfather are entrepreneurial people, and I think that was always an option, I guess. Maybe it wasn't vocalized, but just knowing that I didn't have that pressure allowed me to take a lot more risks and experiment a bit more. And I've never really had a formal job, so I think there is something to that. I'm glad that's at least so far it's all worked out. But yeah, I think I can't say that I had pressure in that regard. We knew we had to do well, and there was, I don't know how, if this is the right metaphor. We didn't have a lot of rules growing up, but one rule was that when we came home at night, we had to say goodnight to our mother. So there was a little bit of like, respect there, but they let us be free and experiment a lot, which I think was an amazing way to grow up.
I love the label that you prefaced your parents as, hippies, in that sort of way. So obviously the line of going academically was not sort of paved, as in, all you had to do at night was say goodnight to mom. You didn't have to do your maths and homework and 3 years
Oh, we
worth of
did.
work.
No, we did. We couldn't play outside until we finished our homework. So there was that. There was just never the pressure of you're going to be a lawyer, that because I said
Right.
so, or you're going to be a doctor because I'm a doctor. It was try to find something that you're passionate about and explore it and do well in school, work hard on the, athletically. That was a big part of my life. But there wasn't there just wasn't that much pressure from them. They wanted us to be happy. They knew we were going to work hard. I think we were lucky that we were just hard workers in general. So, and probably being a triplet, we didn't get a lot of time to just sit and do nothing. We're always playing, always running around, chasing each other, one-on-one basketball every night for 10 years against my brother. So I think that we were just hardworking and competitive naturally. And I'm glad that our parents gave us the freedom to pursue the things that we were really interested in.
Fantastic. So obviously the height contributed to the athlete being an athlete, right? Obviously you ended up playing b-ball, from what I understand.
Yeah, yeah, we're Lithuanian Americans. Lithuania is a tiny country that punches above its weight when it comes to basketball. Very tall people there, and quite accomplished. And that was always my favorite sport growing up. But again, kind of I remember playing every single sport that was available as a kid, and probably my parents just wanted us to get out of the house and do stuff. But that was sport for me was a huge, huge part of growing up, and it's ultimately what brought me to Zimbabwe. And then I guess yeah, you can credit basketball for the work that we're doing at Uncommon, and if Bachena turns into something noteworthy, you can probably credit basketball for that too. So sport was always a huge part of my life.
Great stuff. Now, Peter, I couldn't wait to leave Zimbabwe. I mean, given how I grew up and who I was becoming, I couldn't find myself in that particular space. But you did the opposite. You jumped ship and you went to Zimbabwe. Walk us through, first of all, what was the inspiration? What were you looking for? And what were you hoping to achieve?
I wish that I could say it was really thought out and intentional, but the long story short is I wanted to go to Cape Town, and I was going to volunteer with this organization, Hoops for Hope, to teach basketball and life skills to kids. And I wanted to go to Cape Town, and the guy that ran the organization said, "Yeah, sure, but go to Zimbabwe instead." And I had just finished high school, I just turned 18. I was pretty up for an adventure. I really had no concept of Zimbabwe. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. This was 2011, so certainly we had the internet, but I wasn't really, I didn't do a lot of research. I had two giant bags full of basketballs and jerseys and shoes that I was going to bring with me to the organization I was volunteering with, but that was about it. And when I landed in Harare, within 2 hours of landing, we were in DZ playing basketball until the sun went down. And a couple hours after the sun went down, we were sitting around the court drinking Castle. And within I don't know, an hour after the Castle came out, they passed around the Scud or the Trabuku. And so, you can imagine a young man like me, just turned 18 years old, off on this adventure, playing the sport he loves with people that are amazing, telling stories, drinking Chibuku. I was pretty hooked on Zimbabwe right away. I just instantly felt at home and amongst peers. And so I can't, your experience, we have different experiences for sure. I wasn't intentionally trying to find anything. I wanted to go and have a cool experience, and I ended up having the best summer of my life. And I ended up having a experience that transformed the way I saw the world and the way I understood how the world works. I think I learned more about just people and society from that first summer in Zimbabwe than maybe all of my schooling combined. And I was always kind of, I took school seriously, but I used to tell my friends about that Mark Twain quote, never to let schooling interfere with your education. So that was more of the way I approached things, was to be experiential. And I think I learned a lot more from experiences than academics. But yeah, so it was an amazing experience that summer in Zimbabwe, basically just playing basketball and playing with kids, teaching them. We would work in Glenora, Glenview, Mabuku. DZ was our home base, played a lot of pool in the DZ sports bar after the basketball training was done, and just generally had a great time with no real expectations or hopes, just trying to be present and be helpful. And it ended up being one of the best experiences of my life.
Absolutely. I can imagine 18, if you look back home, you had to wait until you're 21 until you could, taste alcohol.
Yeah,
Setback.
that was a perk, man. That was a perk. I don't know if you remember, they let me kind of loose in Harare. I remember going out to Gentem Bar in the Net
Oh,
One building, or man, it was fun. We had a lot of fun.
absolutely. And I could also, attest to this because the culture in Zimbabwe is always accommodating. Wherever you go, people would say, hi, what's happening? Up until
Right.
you've proven yourself guilty, then nobody cares for you. And also, you probably came in at a time where so many, people had experienced, a lot of education. So many people had gone to like really good schools, I think, at that particular time, so they would
Yeah.
find it easy to communicate with you. And also just the fact that they know somebody from overseas is like a nice little perk that the kids would want to go and tell stories back home. And I bet people wanted to bring you back to their hood and walk with you, play basketball with you, all of those things, just so they can, yeah, just get you to experience.
Totally, man. And I totally. I got in trouble with my host family for spending the night in Glenview with a friend of mine. So they definitely, I was embraced with open arms by so many people,
Yeah,
and I was keen enough to just try everything. And Zimbabwe, it felt so safe, man. And there's so much love, is what I experienced. I know everyone's experience is different, but I remember one of the things that stood out to me that I just loved was when you would shake hands with a friend of yours, a man and a man shaking hands, and then you'd find yourself walking and talking down the street, and you would not have let go of each other's hands. You'd just be holding hands, talking, and that was unusual for my lived experience, but it felt instantly, it felt good to me. And I remember trying to bring that back to the US a little bit, and definitely getting a couple stares, and I definitely didn't hold on quite as long as we did in Zimbabwe. But I always found that there's just such a rich human connection. And you're so right, the small talk, just everybody's down to small talk, whether it's the person at the till or the police officer, whoever you're speaking with, the kid, the children, how are you? Just whenever you walk by, and there's just so much. My experience of Zimbabwe is nothing but love, and it still remains true 15 years later after that first trip. With the moment I touched down and I'm in that steamy air, though the airport is really nice now, but that old airport was a little steamy, and it just, I just felt the love, talking with the taxi drivers outside, and I felt right at home.
absolutely. Now, there's also one other thing while we're still on that sort of train of thought. You'd have to have different handshakes for each person that you'd meet. Somebody has a different way of whatever, and you got to remember them. Depending on how well you know each other.
Just the
And
handshakes, man, not just the handshakes, but the whistles. And I could never get it down. I spent the whole summer, 3 months, trying to learn how to like really produce a loud whistle, because our kind of cruise sound. Exactly. I see you. Yeah, exactly. I just couldn't do it. I could whistle the other way, but I couldn't get enough volume there. But yeah, so our gang had a little sound. You'd just be walking around the streets. You the whistle would go out, and then gates would open. People would come out. So yeah, the handshakes, the whistles, totally.
Great stuff. So there's a word or a phrase that you used which is lived experience, all right? And you did mention certain things did not occur in your own lived experience. So you came, you saw, and there was that, disconnect with what you're used to and the way other people live and things of that nature. And that we just sort of highlighted on a few things. Would that have been the reason why you started both your projects, Uncommon and Pachena? What sort of real world problem were you seeing that frustrated
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. Again, the truth is not always as interesting and maybe glamorous as you might hope. But so my story was that I had this amazing time in Zimbabwe in 2011. Then I went to university, and in 2013, I went back to Zimbabwe to volunteer with the same organization. And then during my senior year of university, I won our school's pitch competition for a startup idea. And that sort of gave me the confidence to maybe forego the traditional job applying and go. A lot of my peers were going to Wall Street or going to DC and doing consulting. And I had the confidence to apply to accelerator programs in San Francisco. So I ended up going from school into a startup accelerator called the Founder Institute in Silicon Valley to learn how to turn this technology idea into a technology company. And during that time, I was living with family in the Bay Area. I was sort of moonlighting as an Uber driver. Oh, actually, no, Uber driving was more of the day job. This is early Uber days. And then I was going to this accelerator program, learning how to build software companies, basically. And that was a great experience because I was just driving people around, pitching them my idea. And back in those days, you could talk to your driver. Now nobody wants to talk in those when you're doing the ride shares. They just have driverless cars now, so you don't have to talk at all. So they probably in today's world they would have hated me, but back then they heard me out, which was really fun. And from there, ended up somehow finding myself with our co-founders on Apple TV's first ever TV show. This was their first attempt at TV. The show was called Planet of the Apps, and it was basically a celebrity Shark Tank focused on app developers. And the judges of that show were Gwyneth Paltrow, Jessica Alba, Will.I.am, and Gary Vaynerchuk. And they actually flew us out to Hollywood onto a set to give an elevator pitch to these celebrity judges. So we were on set. We had to start at the top of the elevator, come down and pitch our idea before we made it to the bottom. And what ensued, or what the MC later described our performance as, was as a total bloodbath. And I think that we had been perhaps invited on to be sort of the bad singers in American Idol and to add humor and color to the show. So that was my startup experience. The first one was this epic failure on TV, and they ended up airing the show, or airing our episode on season 1, episode 1. So if you go to Planet of the Apps, you can see us. One of the first people is us just getting humiliated by Will.I.am and Jessica Alba and Gwyneth Paltrow. And anyway, so kind of go back to the drawing board at that stage, 23 years old. You clearly had a terrible idea for this company, and now what do you want to do with your life? And the reality is, I felt the pull to go back to Zimbabwe. One of the one of my learnings from the startup experience was I don't really know anything about technology. I had ideas, but I didn't really know technology. So I had the thought maybe I should learn how to teach kids, and through that process I can learn. So that's what I did. I got a job in New York City teaching coding to kids. In the interview, I said I think I'd like to learn how to do this so I could do something like this in Zimbabwe. I didn't want to go back and teach basketball. I wanted to do something a little bit more that stimulated me a bit more. And that's ultimately how I found myself back in Zimbabwe right at the end of 2017 in October, was with 20 laptops from my elementary school, my best friend from high school, my future wife, the three of us, back in Zimbabwe, back in D.Z. with my friends from the basketball days, just walking around with computers and seeing if there's any interest. Would people want to learn computer coding? Could we teach without electricity, without internet? Would the teachers support us? Would the schools buy into it? Would the parents embrace what we were doing? And it was just so clear in those 4 months that we were there that there's an overwhelming demand and thirst for technology education, and there was very little supply at the time. So that was how we got started. End of 2017, early 2018, just walking around DZ teaching computer coding to kids with my old basketball buddies. And it's evolved a lot. You know, we had over 20,000 kids in our coding program last year. We've trained hundreds of young adults for the tech workforce, helping people go from earning $900 a year to 9,000 or $10,000 a year. So it's evolved a lot as an organization. But that was the origin story. It was kind of just wanting to be back in Zimbabwe, having failed as a technologist and had started teaching kids to learn, and, and knowing that I wasn't necessarily wanting to be a basketball coach, and this felt like a cool idea. And I called up my friends. Did they have jobs? No. Would they want to teach coding to kids? Not really sure what you're talking about, but sounds interesting. And we just kind of took a crack, and thankfully we did.
Absolutely. And kudos to you, man, for having seen a need and done something about it. I mean, somebody would have, after being, like you said, publicly humiliated on that TV show, you would have been like, nah, this is not for me, curled in fetal position, and then decided to just chill and do stuff for yourself. But you went on and did something selfless, so much that your goal now is to make Zimbabwe the most tech literate country in Africa, and then go on and replicate that model in developing communities around the world. Now, that is a very big ambition. How do you intend to do that?
Well, two things. The first advice, or some of the early advice I got, was to dream big, start small, start now. And I tell that to anyone that wants to be an entrepreneur. You have to dream big, but you have to start really, really small, and you have to start now and just let those small little victories compound. I mean, when we first started, we had 20 kids, and now there's 20,000, and we had a few $1,000s, and now our budget's a lot bigger than that. But it didn't happen overnight. It was all sort of brick by brick. So dream big, start small, start now is, I think, the right approach to getting started. And about having thick skin, one of the and not curling up in the fetal position, one of the advice pieces of advice that I got when I was at the Startup Accelerator program was they had the whole room of these sort of wannabe entrepreneurs or hopefuls get up, stand up, and just start chanting, I am not my idea. I am not my idea. And I think that the lesson there was, or the sheer fact is that most small businesses will fail, most startups will fail, but you are not a failure. So your idea might be a failure, but you're not a failure. And I think I had internalized that by the time we made it onto to national TV. And I was just kind of hoping nobody would watch it. I don't know. But I think that by that stage, I just realized I'm not my idea. This idea didn't work. That doesn't mean I'm not going to work or that I'm a failure. So I think that was really helpful. And yeah, dreaming big and not being afraid of failing, I think were critical parts of getting Uncommon off the ground early on.
Mm. In Zimbabwe, we always say, we Zimbabweans will make a plan. I mean, what the economy is like. You were talking about how the electricity is sometimes available, which is literally what ZESA stands for, Zimbabwe electricity, sometimes available. And, but people always seem to make a plan. The currency, you could just wake up and then, whatever you had yesterday is no longer useful. Now you got to figure out how to find bread. And there's usually somebody down the road who can source bread for you and things like that. You know what I mean? That's when I was growing up,
Totally.
right? But I mean, for those that are watching right now, if you've ever felt underestimated or compared to others while you're growing up, I want you to drop the words uncommon in the comments there, because sometimes what actually feels like pressure when you're getting started literally becomes your superpower. Okay. And, obviously,
Yeah.
it's one of those things,
Yeah.
right?
And I just, yeah. And, through this work at Uncommon, we've been lucky, and I've been very lucky in particular to meet a lot of amazing people, to meet ambassadors, to meet ministers, to meet chief executive officers of some of the largest companies in the country. And one thing that strikes me is how most people, all of us, deal with this imposter syndrome at some level. And we think that we're the only ones. But to see people in the highest offices just be humble and admit, man, I'm still figuring it out, or I don't know how I got to where I am. I feel underqualified, or this is scary to me too. I mean, everybody's going through these moments of self-doubt, or I think most people are. And you just have to be persistent, and you have to be humble, and to try to not have an ego when it comes to starting businesses or companies or really doing anything. And so it was amazing to get that exposure also, and to
Mm.
realize that humans humans everywhere are more or less the same. I mean, that was a big lesson from my first time in Zimbabwe. The greatest thing I ever did in my life was be born to my parents and in the town that I was born in, and in the country and in the era. You know, I'm just so lucky, and where we are born defines often where we end up, and that's sort of one of the points of uncommon, is to try to end that. That should not be the case. The situation you're born into should not define the place that you end up in life. And education is a huge part of that. Access is a huge part of that. Opportunity is a huge part of that. Confidence and knowing that people believe in you is a big part of that. And that's what I'm hoping we're accomplishing with our work, is just giving people the chance to learn, and the chance to experiment and explore, and to see what they're capable of, and doing it in the context of education and technology. And it's been amazing to see the results, and I hope that we can continue to grow, and I hope other partners will take on this challenge and try to bring resources, skills, training to urban and rural environments, and in Zimbabwe and all over the world. You don't have to go to Zimbabwe to start something like Uncommon. It would work in New York City too. There's people that would benefit from more opportunity all over the world. But for me, Zimbabwe just grabbed hold, man, and here I am still there 15 years later. So
All right, Peter, I want to tell you something. I mean, obviously, I don't know if you know anything about my story, but when I was 13 years old, I had an exchange student teacher who came to my school, and she was from Australia. And she taught us, like you said, her lived experience. And we never knew life was anywhere outside. Like you're talking about the kids in DZ, or, wherever you would go on the streets, all they know is roads that are made of dust. And also they play with old tires and old equipment, which they fashion into toys. And that was me back then. But
yeah,
this teacher came to our school, showed us everything that was there to know about what the outside world looks like. And when she was leaving, she made, in true Aussie fashion, like, if ever any of you kids are in Australia, please look me up, and we can have a coffee. And to the other
wow,
kids, that was just a goodbye message. To me, that became a North Star. And
wow,
pretty much 21 years later, I find myself in the streets of Melbourne, and there's a whole televised episode of me looking for her, and we finally found her, and things of that nature. I'll shoot you through that. All right. So
wow,
what you're doing matters, because you might think, oh yeah, that was me at 18, just having Jabuko and Scott or whatever it is, but somebody was watching, looking, and how different you are, how different you dress. And you will also notice how, for the kids that were around you, would maybe emulate the way you spoke, your accent, or the way you dressed. So you might not see it now, but I bet
mm,
you 20, 25 years later, somebody's going to come either knocking on your house's door or somewhere and tell you, Peter, because of you, I did not give up. So now you've done it for 10,106. I mean, according to your website, kids that you have taught, that's a lot of people. Thank you.
yeah, yeah. Thank you, thank you, and your story is amazing. You know, if one person feels like the work that we're doing helped them or changed their life for the better, then it will have been worthwhile. And I'm proud that I can think of a lot of people that have really said, "Wow, Uncommon, this experience changed my life." And so I really am proud of the work that we're doing, and I hope that we are doing it the right way, and doing it by just consistently showing up and being there for people. And hopefully at a personal level, if some kid saw me and they saw the way I talked or dressed, or interacted, if they felt inspired, that would be amazing. But hopefully they saw more than anything how much I genuinely love Zimbabwe, and ideally how much or the way I treat people, and hopefully I treated everybody equally. That was something that was instilled in me by my parents and grandparents at an early age, and something that I saw firsthand. And I hope that I've lived that way too, because I think that more than anything is the legacy that I hope to leave, which is just that people felt important when they were around me, and that they felt valued and respected and appreciated. I hope that's more than anything the legacy that I will have left at a personal level. Of course, from a organizational standpoint, I hope that Uncommon can play an important role in people's lives for a long time, in lots of people's lives, and that more than anything, people see that our organization cares about them. I think that's really the most important thing. And that's why we kind of design the program that way. We build infrastructure in the communities that we work in. We don't extract young people from their neighborhoods to bring them into the CBD, into a fancy building. We build fancy infrastructure in their neighborhoods so that we can reduce all the barriers to entry. So you can just wake up, walk down the street, and go to your innovation hub. And we try to make them look beautiful and inspiring. There's no burglar bars on any one of our innovation hubs. There's just glass windows and bright colors and flowers, and the way our program works is that when a young person joins our full-time program, they study. It's 12 months long. It's entirely free. You get the computers, the instructors, in-person instructors, electricity, internet. You come and you study in the morning, training for the tech workforce, and in the afternoons, you get your laptops, you go to the nearby government school, and you teach computer coding to the kids at the school. So it's by design. This is by community members for community members, and it's about something much bigger than any one individual. So I hope that people recognize that. I know for our students, it's one of the most important parts of the journey of their experience at Uncommon, is that they're not just doing it for themselves, they're doing it for their siblings and their peers and their schools. And that's kind of the Ubuntu spirit. I'm surprised when people are surprised by our model. To me, it's like the most natural model that there was, based off of my experience in Zimbabwe, which was just, we're in it together, and what I have, I'll gladly give to you. And yeah, just this sense of community and brotherly love. Again, that was my experience, and I hope that comes out in the work that we're doing.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you realize, but representation matters. All right. So all the other kids that are growing up right now, they may be just being exposed to, the only success that they know is probably the local doctor or the local teacher or the local.
Totally.
They don't know what technology has in store. And the fact that you're doing it at a grassroots level, it actually makes a lot of sense. And maybe just in case people are watching this and they want to be involved, or maybe
Mhm.
maybe volunteer, or whatever it is that they feel compelled to do, what would be the best way that people can get a hold of you, Peter?
Yeah, well, certainly, I mean, is an obvious one, and I don't mind if anybody has it. You can email me at peter@uncommon.org. Our LinkedIn presence is our biggest, and you can find uncommon.org on LinkedIn. That's where we're most active. But you talked about representation. One of the great things we do is invite the Zimbabwean corporate sector to our hubs, people to come and share their uncommon stories with our students, because that matters so much. And we do that guest speaking both in person but also virtually. And Prosper, I mean, we'd love to have you virtually speak to our students and share your story, and certainly your audience. Anybody that wants to mentor a student, we do that virtually. Every one of our bootcamp students gets matched with a mentor for one-on-one mentorship. But guest speaking, mentorship, those are great ways to get involved. We're a nonprofit, so fundraising, that's always a big effort of ours. If you want to get involved that way, donate an old computer, join or become a monthly donor, just feel free to email me and we can brainstorm ways in which you can get involved. Maybe we can do an event in Australia for Uncommon. In fact, we've been very, very blessed by the Australian people and the Zimbabwean diaspora in Australia. So I hope that we can do more on the continent there and start to thank the Australians for the way in which they've supported our work in Zimbabwe, because that's been a pretty amazing relationship also. But yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best place where I'm most active.
Absolutely. And I'll definitely put all the show links in, all the links in the show so that people can find their way there. And now that you've mentioned it, earlier on in the show, Peter, you did mention that you defined success earlier on as in a happy family or a family that was connected. And it looks like you've recreated this, but on a bigger scale, not the family of you being triplets and the people that were in immediate family of yours, but you've gone on and created your own family that is uncommon.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. And I don't know, I think some business leaders say you're not supposed companies are not supposed to be families, they're teams, and they don't like the family thing. But luckily we're not, we're a nonprofit, so we can be more pulling at the heartstrings. I think it is a family, and sometimes there's tough love with the family, and you have to we've got examples of that, and folks listening might know what I'm talking about, and hopefully those decisions were always the right decisions. But getting back, coming to Zimbabwe, everybody says welcome home, and it is familial. And we have a, I should say, we have a great country director, and I think one of the things that is so great about her is her maternal instinct. And we're a young organization, a young team, and our country director, who joined the team a couple years ago and is leading the organization in Zimbabwe, has done an amazing job at nurturing the type of culture I'm that we're aspiring for, which is, yeah, pretty familial. So it is, uncommon will always be a hugely important part of my personal story, and I just hope that we can continue to grow the organization and impact more people, and that Uncommon in 10 years will be bigger and better by far than it is today. And by the way, all credit to the team in Zimbabwe on the ground doing the work every day. Half of our staff are former students of ours. There's a really nice culture that we're building because of that. But it's just been amazing to work alongside such vibrant, thoughtful, hardworking, and really purpose-minded young people. I feel honored to get to work with some of the most amazing people that I know in Zimbabwe, and just in general. So it's really been quite the privilege.
Absolutely. And well, I bet there will be a lot of people that every time you land at the airport dancing and celebrating your arrival just because you've completely changed their lives. And while you were thinking, I mean, obviously you got an opportunity to pitch to the people on Planet of the Apes, and obviously they didn't see what you were capable of. But now I'm going to want to pitch myself to you there, Peter, and say for all the people that you're working with, if you could find a few that can actually take on roles as virtual assistants in, say, Australia or in the UK, would you be open to start teaching people practical things so they can immerse themselves into, companies and, businesses that are obviously looking for people that are articulate, know what they're doing, and actually speak good English?
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the, so for the last few years, we've averaged about 70% job placement rate within 6 months. So this is our graduates that are going either into internships or full-time technology roles. And we have no prerequisites to joining our program. So we've got teen parents, high school dropouts, whatever. It really doesn't matter. As long as you are determined and you can demonstrate a grittiness and you're going to stick it out, you usually get into our programs. Now we're getting a lot of applicants and we have limited space, so it's becoming a bit more competitive. But there was never meant to be prerequisites. All that to say, a lot of our graduates are going and working for outsourcing companies that are working directly into Australia and then the UK and then even into the US and Canada as well. So absolutely, yeah, that is another way that people can help. If you really a great way to help is to take a chance on an uncommon graduate and to hire them and give them a job and an opportunity to learn. That is one of the ways we measure if our programs are even working, is if our young people are graduating and getting employed. So that would be a wonderful way to get involved.
Absolutely. And for those that are watching, you've noticed and have heard Peter, he really builds on common pathways for people in organizations who just don't want average results. So if you see yourself in a story, maybe the comparison, the pressure to drive or create something better, then I think this conversation isn't just inspiration. It is that a sign that you've been waiting for. And I really think it is an invitation to actually really look at what legacy are you building or creating, or who are you becoming? So if you want to learn more, I will leave all the links in the show notes, uncommon.org and also pachena.co and his contact details there. Now, Peter, I can't thank you enough for the time that you took, obviously, to be with us on the show today, but also for the work that you're doing. I mean, your life story and your experience have so much value for a lot of people that you are touching, even without you realizing it. The fact that people know something like this is just down the road, that information changes situations. And on behalf of everybody else, the 10,106 people and the lives that you're going to be touching, thank you, M.E.D.I.A.
Thank you, Prosper. It really means a lot, your kind words, and thank you for the opportunity to share our story and to shine a light on the work that we're doing at Uncommon. And really, I hope people will reach out and want to get involved. This is an amazing opportunity to tell our story. Thank you.
Too good, Peter. And for those that are watching, obviously, you've noticed that being different isn't something to hide. It's actually something to build from. Or rejection, no matter who it is. Gwyneth Patrol, who else was there? Gary
Will
Vaynerchuk.
I Am from the Black Eyed Peas, Gary Vaynerchuk, an amazing entrepreneur, and Jessica
Yeah,
Alba, my crush as a child, my movie celebrity crush, just crushed my dreams.
I can
It
imagine.
was
But you know, something like that, rejection is usually redirection. Okay. You could have ended up in Cape Town for all we know, and none of this would have been happening. So certain things are happening not to us, but for us. And I can't wait to see what everybody's going to do with this information right now. So for everybody that's watching, if this conversation really shifted something in you, I encourage you to share it with somebody who's maybe trying to build something meaningful, but kind of feels misunderstood. And obviously, if somebody has brought you here, thank them immensely, because they've seen something in you that you might not have seen in yourself. And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe. And obviously, check out our next episode, where we're going to be diving into ideas that will help you design a happier existence, not just a successful one. So subscribe, stay uncommon. And remember, prosperity isn't just about money. It's about alignment, and it's about giving back. Until next time, bye for now.